Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. If this is your first time watching, we'd love it if you could hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell so that you are aware when we post things.
Today, we're going to be talking about JJK, Jujutsu Kaisen. Baby, what a time. What a time we are in.
JJK has completely taken over my entire... It's like how when The Last of Us was on, or when House of the Dragon was on, or Andor. Man,
it's like all you're thinking about.
When Andor was on the same time as House of the Dragon...
They were at the same time.
There was a little bit of an overlap. There was... Because it was on the Sunday, and then the was it Wednesday it came on? Damn, bro. We need to finish rewatching that.
Yeah. I'm always down to rewatch that show. We didn't even get to the best parts, honestly. We didn't even, when we were rewatching, we didn't even get to the prison part.
Which is that peak television right there, man. Let me tell you.
The tension that they built up.
Let me tell you.
So JJK, where we see Sukuna go off again.
What a menace he is.
I'm so conflicted because something about him I like.
There is some charm. It's very twisted and weird.
Yeah, something about him I'm like, ooh.
He's kind of nonchalant with everything when he's not fighting. You know, he's got his hands in his pocket all the time. He's always kind of like in a relaxed state when he's sitting on the chair. You know?
I think it's also that he looks like Yuji. It's like
throwing me off.
Yeah, it's like, you know.
Also, the voice actor is there's like charisma in the way that he talks.
The voice actor is really good.
Yeah.
I do also want to say, even though he is in Yuji's body, I do feel that those are two completely they feel completely separate in my mind.
Yeah, their body language is different too.
Body language is different. Everything about them is very different besides the fact that they physically have the same body. But they don't feel the same in any way, which kudos to the animators and the voice actor.
I'm wondering, what does Yuji feel when he's not up front?
Right, I'm like, does he... Because what it seemed like in this episode was when he came out of it, all the memories hit him at once.
Yeah.
Is what it seemed like. Sukuna is definitely conscious and aware of everything when Yuji's in control. So I feel like it must be the same.
You know, they showed all of the frames of the different moments of just destruction that Sukuna was a part of. And then it felt like Yuji had this moment where he was distraught.
Yes.
You know, and that was heartbreaking, especially when they started the episode off with the flashback of his grandfather, where he's like, you have all the strength, you have to help people. And then now he's being controlled by this being that is the antithesis of what his grandfather told him to do.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wrote down too. They definitely showed it to us on purpose. It's two diametrically opposed viewpoints. Yuji views his strength as a responsibility and a mandate to help people, and Sukuna views his strength as a means and a reason to dominate over other people.
Yeah.
And that's not the first time that dynamic has shown up in the show either. It was sort of the same with Geto and Gojo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Gojo saw his strength as a means or a responsibility to protect people until what happened with Geto.
Yeah.
It kind of seemed like prior to that, it's not like he was a bad person that was I'm so strong so I can do whatever I want, but I don't think he saw it as a responsibility of I have to use this to protect people in the way that Geto sort of did. And then you also have the clans and how they view their strength and power as a means of gaining more strength and power, and they sort of use these young sorcerers to do it, whereas Nanami and Gojo are because we're so strong, we have to protect these young sorcerers from these systems of power.
That's probably the best example right there.
Yeah. I'm very interested to see how this dynamic is going to play out, because it's they are literally on the exact opposite of the spectrum of what they believe, but they have to inhabit the same body and war over who's going to take it. Even with the other members of the sorcerer community, the clan leaders, and I do not like saying clan leaders. No, thank you.
Come on.
The leaders. The leaders of all of these major clans, they don't necessarily seem that bothered by the loss of human life.
No.
They kind of seem collateral damage, it is what it is. All of them for different reasons. You had the old guy that just was very extremely nonchalant and did not care until he could prove himself powerful and strong. Mm-hmm. And he even was I don't really care about Gojo, to be honest with you guys. Like, this is kind of good for me.
Yeah.
Kusakabe also, not necessarily because I don't know if it's that he didn't care, but he was just too afraid to actually try and save anybody.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, honestly, relatable. Who of us would want to run into that kind of
like Gojo got sealed, and if he don't stand a chance,
what am I gonna do? Truthfully, what am I gonna do? What can I really do to help in this situation? Not much.
I don't know.
Yes, I'm picking up on that theme as well of like when you are given access to all of this power and strength, what do you view its use as? Because even between Megumi and Yuji, there's been like some differences. Like when they were going to into this the juvenile detention center, I think, earlier on, and Yuji was like, we're here to save everybody. It doesn't really matter what they did or what they do or what happens after we save them. Our goal, our only role here is to protect life, and that's all valuable. And Megumi was like, it's like, I don't know. They made their choice. If they murder people afterward, like, when he said something, he was like, what about when the person that you save ends up killing a bunch of people? And then what do you do? What do you do then? So even there's like a difference in opinion of like, how do you measure the value of life? And how do you use your strength and power to protect it?
Last episode, when we see her with the principal at that area where they have been like healing some people, she did say something that made me kind of sad. The principal asked her, hey, I thought you quit smoking. And then she was like, yeah, I've just been thinking about my time here when I was a student. Her character gets a little like overshadowed, granted, because, you know, Geto and Gojo were the main characters in that hidden inventory arc. But honestly, she was there throughout that entire thing also, you know, like she was like the trio that like we get now. And I feel like I would like to see that explored in terms of what was it like for her to lose one of her close friends also. Now, granted, she wasn't as close as Gojo was to Geto, but you can clearly see that like even this is taking a toll on her, right? What I loved about this show, they provide so much character development in like the intro and outro. Like even in the hidden inventory arc, you see them all hanging out like all the time. And so you get the sense that like they were all really close.
Yeah. I was also thinking about, I don't necessarily have it completely fleshed out yet, but there is like this reoccurring thing of like the past and its impact on the present. It kind of shows up in two different ways. There's the ways in which the past shows up in the present to maintain the status quo. Like, I think the biggest thing is the way that these special techniques are like re-inherited and reiterated in each generation within these clans, and usually are used to maintain that clan's status and power in this world. Then we have ways in which the past is being reiterated into the present to disrupt things. Yuji was a huge disruption to the status quo and to these systems just because of his ability to intake the finger, right? But then Sukuna now being like a literal embodiment of the past in the present, just shaking the table, and Geto, at his body being physically reused in the present day now, again to do something that is shaking things up and disrupting the status quo in ways that is not good for anybody, but I think is probably definitely concerning to these people in power who kind of rely on things staying the same.
Yeah.
Because Gojo has been trying to, you know, he's been trying to insert ways to sort of change things and shake things up and disrupt things, and they're very resistant to that. And now they're sort of being forced to by like the actual physical manifestation of the past in the present time.
Yeah. I also think characters like Gojo and Nanami are people who learned from the past.
Yep.
There's actually a scene where I think one of the animators had, you know, like we saw buildings being collapsed everywhere in that fight with Sukuna in this recent episode. Apparently, one of the buildings was like MAPPA's headquarters, I guess, which honestly, if that is true, I don't know, I haven't verified it, but if that is true, very hilarious. Primarily because
they're angry.
The working conditions are not good. Like, apparently animators have been tweeting about like some of them wanting to leave. One person was like, throw your key card in the trash on your way out. And a lot of it is like them trying to get things done in like a very super quick pace. Like JJK 0, apparently they did all that in like 4 months, which is, I don't even understand what kind of working conditions you would have to do to accomplish that in 4 months. And apparently this is unverified, so I'm not sure, but I've read online that some of these episodes are completed a couple of days, a day, sometimes several hours before 1 p.m. for us. So that is just insane to me.
I'm begging all of these studios, please just do what they say. Please. Just give them what they are asking for. Don't fight it. Just do it.
Shout out to Christopher Nolan. What a guy. So Oppenheimer crossed 950 million.
Okay.
Which
is the most a movie's ever made or something?
Well, for a rated R movie that is also a war movie, one, I think it's like second highest grossing rated R film. I think it's up there. And two, it being a war film that's also like it's not like a biopic, but like you're telling the story of this person. Normally those types of films don't make that much money. And a lot of people were talking about like, you don't see that kind of impact and influence of a director anymore, where you would go and see a movie, like the excitement is not just about the actor. It's not a fictional character like an IP of like a Marvel or a Star Wars or DC. You're going because the name of the director. Like, yeah, people like Martin Scorsese, like he has his fans.
Yeah,
people like and I'm talking about right now, not like in the 90s or 80s with Steven Spielberg. I'm talking about like right now. I don't think any of them in like the last 10 to 15 years have had as big of a cultural impact as Nolan has on cinema.
I don't think so.
And I don't think it's close.
I think there's only like 2 or 3 directors I can think of where I am like, I don't care what film it is. If you make it, I'm going to go see it. It's Nolan, it's Jordan Peele, and Ryan Coogler. And I think that's it. Ava DuVernay, probably, but her lane is less of my vibe.
That's actually a good point, because I am always down to watch anything Jordan Peele makes.
Yeah, I don't care what it is. I'm going to be excited.
I'm curious to see what Coogler ends up doing like after Marvel, because Oppenheimer, I don't think anyone was expecting it. People had, experts had it up making to like, they had it making 400 million, 450 million, some people 500 million. No one had it like, oh, it's only like 50 million away from like $1 billion. Like no one ever anticipated that. Now, some of it is like Barbie and the Barbieheimer thing, like had up with the marketing. But I also think like,
well, how much did Barbie make?
It made over $1 billion.
Okay. So
yeah.
Okay.
I think people were like, this was a cultural moment. And I think word of mouth was also it too.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, really good.
They were like, this is a fucking brilliant film.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was thinking about that earlier of like, since The Dark Knight, everything he's put out feels like such a big moment in film. But you mentioned Jordan Peele. I think that's probably another person where I'm like critics are going to love it and it'll make a bunch of money. Because I think there are some people, where it's like you're not really sure.
I had a thought, and I was thinking about how like a lot of the time I feel like when people of color talk about representation in film, white people think that we're talking about it solely from the perspective of, I want to be able to see myself in these roles. I want my children to be able to look up to, superheroes and heroes in films and characters who look like them. I want them to see themselves represented in all of these different genres, and that they just think like that's it. And that's the whole reason why we have that conversation. And I think that they think that that's trivial, and they think that that is just not that important of a thing. Right. Which I want to say that's not trivial, and that is a very valid reason to want representation in film. But I actually think that there's another reason why people want representation in film. And the reason why I think that is because I've kind of talked about this before, but like in education, we talk about the concept of windows and mirrors. And we talk about how a lot of times we talk about it from the angle of like Black children need Black teachers to be mirrors, right? They get windows all the time, which is people who are different from them, and give them exposure to like other experiences and other, you know, types of people and cultures, etc. But like they need mirrors. They need people who look like them teaching them, so that, you know, that person can empathize with their experience, can articulate some of the things that they go to better than them, can have a better understanding of their background and where they come from, right? And there's like a bunch of data to back that up. What we don't often talk about is like what impact does it have on white students if all of their authority figures in their life are white? Like if all your teachers are white, if all your principals are white, if all your doctors are white, if all of your pastors are white, if every single authority figure that you ever come across in your life is a white person, you have no windows. And you're not going to be able to fathom people different from you in positions of authority. And I think that's actually a large part of the problem that we have with white adults who come up against Black people that are in positions that are equal to or above them and don't know how to operate in that space because they've literally never had that happen before, right? But I was thinking about that with film and how like that is also another way that representation in film operates, is that it is a lens through which white people and white audiences can have a window, can see a person who looks different than them and can be inspired by that person, can, if you're a child, like want to grow up and be like that person. You know, like there was pictures of like, I remember one picture in particular after Black Panther,
that white kid,
of a white girl who dressed up as Shuri and being like, you should want this, right? Like as a parent, you should want your child to see people of color and be like, I can see myself in that person too. Right? Like this is an important thing. Like a big part of the reason why representation in film matters is also so that white people can see films and stories where they are asked to sympathize and empathize and view the world through the lens of a person who is not like them. And that made me think of everything that's happening right now with the conversation around Israel and Palestine, and how there's so many people right now that cannot understand what is happening there without seeing Hamas as the aggressor. Like they cannot fathom an understanding of that situation that does not have that sort of underlying foundation of like, well, they started it and they are the aggressor in this situation, and so Israel's just defending themselves and fighting back, and Israel has the right to defend itself. You know, all these talking points that we've been hearing. And I was thinking about how in our film in the West, I cannot think of a single thing, a movie, a big movie, a small movie, a TV show. I cannot think of a single thing that has had Muslim people in it where they are not presented as an aggressor. Like there's nothing I can think of besides Miss Marvel that literally came out the last year and this year, right? Like every single time that they are present on screen, which is rare, they are almost always presented as an aggressor against the protagonist that we are supposed to root for.
Yeah.
And so I feel like a lot of people don't even have a framework of understanding Muslim people not through that lens, because of how we in the West have interacted with them in real life, and like how real geopolitical things have played out in real life, coupled with how that has impacted what we see in film and television. I don't think like film and television is going to be the thing that like changes the world and like changes everything, but I do think it's one of the few like collective experiences that we have left that like kind of cuts through all of the like, everybody's very like, you know, siphoned off right now in their silos because of algorithms and because you choose the news that you want to watch and you know, whatever.
Right.
But film and TV are one of the few things that like we all watch. You might interpret it differently, but like everybody is aware of and talking about Black Panther when it comes out. Everybody is aware of and talking about Oppenheimer when it comes out. And so it's one of the few places that you can put something out and reach a bunch of different audiences and mindsets and viewpoints at the same time. And so I actually think like representation in film and TV is actually extremely important in terms of like our politics and how people are able to understand and empathize with people when we have situations like what's happening right now in Israel and Palestine.
I mean, that's kind of why I fell in love with Rami so quickly. One, it felt like a window. And two, you are forced to follow a protagonist observing in a lot of these episodes how they are navigating the world while the world sees them as antagonists. Like that's happening on multiple occasions in that show where you're seeing the impact of how they have to consistently navigate through that space of never being seen in sort of like a positive perspective. So perfect example, obviously 9/11 emotions and tensions are high. A defense mechanism kicked in based off of how the show sort of portrays it for a lot of Muslim people, where like in the dad's case, he's like, listen, I need these people to know that I'm not with Osama bin Laden. I'm not with like Al Qaeda. I'm not with, like Saddam Hussein. And so like he starts putting like up like American
flags
on front. And so like he looks at his neighbor like to sort of like, hey, I'm one of you. Now there's a lot that you can sort of unpack there, but that was again an example of sort of what you sort of touched on, of that shift of like survival mode having to kick in, where you essentially have to force yourself to like assimilate even past your comfortability level just for the sake of surviving. Seeing that form of a protagonist, we had never seen that on television, at least done in that positive way, like that impactful way too.
For a lot of people, social media has provided a similar sort of window. Like I know, like I was introduced to what it was to be a Muslim person in that era and after that era of 9/11 through social media and like Muslim people in America getting online and sharing that experience. The problem is that I'm seeing that because that's how my algorithm curated. And I think even with Rami, people who are choosing to watch Rami are choosing to watch Rami, But if you get a blockbuster film that everybody's talking about, I think this is why sometimes it's like, it actually is so important that like these big superhero films are diverse, because everybody's going to go and watch that. Even the people who are going to hate watch it are going to go see it. Yeah.
I mean, the Marvels had moments where like something bad's going to happen, almost felt semi like a crash, like almost like a spaceship crash. Kamala's parents start praying, and then Nick Fury is like, whoa, are you praying? Right? And then the parents, probably based off of what they've experienced, right? They're like, oh, sorry. And Nick's right. And then Nick Fury's like, wait, no, keep praying. Like, we're going to need all the help that we can get. Like, even that slight shift of like, normally even hearing prayers from Muslim people is associated with 9/11, with terrorism, a negative connotation. But something done just as subtle as that in a very humorous way, that is a pretty significant shift on how you internalize the effects of what do I associate hearing a Muslim praying with in the real world. And things like that. I don't think like Miss Marvel was like the best MCU show, but I don't think it can be overstated how culturally important it is. Because I'm watching like some of my favorite people like Heavy Spoilers and Screen Crush, when they're breaking down some of the Easter eggs, it's very similar to with Black Panther. Like, it's not just comic book Easter eggs, it's like cultural Easter eggs that are embedded in it that give you a rich lore of the comic book world and the rich lore of where her people are from also. All of that I think is like super important.
Yes, it definitely matters. And it's just to say, like, it's not a trivial conversation. And I think sometimes people treat it like it is.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of conversation right now around like voting for Biden, not voting for Biden, and like, whatever. I feel like the fact that we are even having that conversation right now is problematic. I'm not even here I was going to say something completely different about this, but I've been thinking about this, and I feel like what's happening is people are already getting to a point of like, they're not going to listen to us. They're not going to call for a ceasefire. We're not going to save them. It's done and it's over. And so they're like skipping through like the right now, and they're immediately going to, okay, what is the fallout of this going to be for us? How are we going to get revenge, or how are we going to protect ourselves from the fallout of this? How are we like, I feel like it's like, guys, like election is a year away, and like what's happening to the people in Gaza is happening like right now in this moment and in this minute. And it honestly feels like we are starting to already give up on the right now and start to center ourselves and what's going to happen later on when we start talking about like who we're voting for. I don't think that Trump or Biden winning or losing next year is like super important to them right now. It's not that the conversation doesn't matter. It just feels a little bit weird to talk about it. And it's like when you hear political pundits and the way that they are talking about that right now, it's like disgusting to hear them be like, what is the impact of this going to be on Biden's campaign? Blah, 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 blah. Like, it's disgusting. And also I'm realizing that we are part of the reason why the conversation happened, because I think so many of us were like, well, they're not going to do anything. So we just went straight to that. But actually we should still be in the mindset of how are we going to get them to listen? That's just not even the conversation to be having right now. Honestly, stop all of that right now. And like, we should still be focusing on like, how are we going to get Biden and the people in Congress to call for a ceasefire? We shouldn't even be in the, if they don't listen, then we're going to do this mindset. We're not there yet. We still have time, and we should still be trying to make it happen right now.
Away. You know how much tragedy can happen from now until then? We can't think that far ahead. We got to be more present. That's a good point.
So that was all. Anywho, that's pretty much
We'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you all next time. Peace out, everyone.